So also keep in mind of like what move does what. So happens to be the safety net, right? His far slash actually is burst safe than his close slash. Don't ask me why.
What's going on, YouTube? We are already back here. You already know I'm about to tell you guys right now. Support your boy. All right, so today's video, we talked about a little bit of like how to utilize defensive bursting, right? And I feel like a lot of people having a hard time like when to burst defensively and stuff like that, because, you know, a lot of people get hard baited and things like that, and a lot of people, you know, burst situations where, you know, they probably wish they would have had a burst later on, you know, and things like that. So my goal today is to make sure you guys have a good idea of how to optimize using defensive burst. And this is for people who are having a hard time learning how to burst in general. It doesn't matter if you're a new player, it doesn't matter if you're a casual, it doesn't matter if you're a good player, it doesn't matter. This is all just general information and ideas that I feel that can help you guys and take you guys to the next level. But before we go to the next level though, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and let me know how you guys feel about this video, okay? Let's jump into it.
Alright guys, so today I want to help you guys improve on how to like utilize bursting, right? Coming into this game, I feel like people, you know, I call it the panic burst. They panic burst a lot, so like, give you an example right here, right? You know, like somebody would burst this, right? And in some examples and cases, right, this is actually, you know, not a bad idea. And the reason why is because, you know, sometimes taking this is actually more efficient than giving them a very strong resource, you know? And I give you an example right here. So I spend, you know, all that meter to just get, you know, this amount of damage, right? Again, burst is a resource, so you wanna be able to keep that in mind, that like, oh, because I have this resource, that means that the player always have to look for it, which means that they have to go out their way to spend resources to call out your resource, right? And of course, the payout is always good for the offensive player if they read you correctly. But if they don't read you correctly, that means that the payout is in your favor now. If you get people to spend meter as a defender, that's actually a win for you, believe it or not. Imagine somebody doing this and they try to call out your burst. Okay, yeah, you took a lot of damage, but it would have been worse having you burst there. Because now you're taking damage and they took your burst. Nah, Cali burst is something like this. No one's near you. Anything like that. That is a Cali burst. Another game plan too, like, and this is something that I personally do. It's basically trying to negate somebody getting positive bonus. So if you know a move or a combo that can actually give them positive bonus, so most of the time you're gonna be bursting like a lot in the corner, right? But if you know how to break, if you know how to stop them from breaking the wall and getting positive bonus, that's also a good defensive way too. See? Yeah, you took a lot of damage, but now they don't have positive bonus. And positive bonus is way more dangerous because not only you get a 10%, you get like a meter bonus, but you also get 10% on damage and defense. Another thing that is really important too is like, basically I call it the V-reversal burst, when they burst on block. So they'll do something like this. That's also a good technique of like bursting. Do you subscribe to the idea to burst early so you get a second? No, I don't. I actually don't agree with that. And the reason why I don't agree with that, because you're basically saying that your early burst is always going to be successful. And that's not how fighting games work. You can't just say, well, if I do this early, it's always going to work. Because you're just saying that the player that you're playing against is never going to adapt to you and is never going to bait that out. And then when you bait that out and you have no burst, then that means you take damage that you could have got out of, but you can't because you wanted to burst early. And I think that logic is very flawed. There's a lot of flaw in the logic. When I hear like it's good to burst early so you can get 3 bursts, what are you bursting? Like, you're not giving me a clear option of like what we're talking about. If you're bursting jab, I don't think that's a great idea. If you're running up gold bursting, that's not going to always work. If you IED gold burst, that's not going to always work. Round start gold burst, damn. That might work. To burst to keep the corner, that's also part of a defensive burst, believe it or not. Because technically you're getting hit, right? So like, again, if somebody hit me like that and I burst, this is good. But of course, obviously, if you like get hit, but you don't want to be predictable on that, because that's still like a one very scenario. Some players actually can pick up where like if an opponent wants to like keep them in like a bad situation, that they will like, you know, they could call that burst on. Yeah, even punishing staggers is also good. Like this, that's also really good. Defensive bursting also comes with decision making. It's knowing when to burst, but also knowing when to take the risk, right? But I feel like a lot of people naturally, when they have a lot of resources, they actually take more risks. I could tell like how experienced players are like as players, depending on the resources they have. For example, people feel like because they have a lot of resources, they could just, you know, take more risk and things like that. And then that's the thing, is like when your risk taking gets punished, you burst immediately. And like now you just threw that resources away. So again, it's always important to understand how valuable that defensive burst is and what it could possibly do just by holding it and also playing smart with it. That's only one situation. So the moral story isn't necessarily that, but it's part of it, right? Another good way I think of like trying to use like a defensive burst, like say for example you read a throw, that's also a good defensive burst right here. Oh, I know he's going to throw here. Now you get meter for that. But and then also again, like because gold burst is kind of harder to punish for a lot of characters, most people are not going to be ready to like punish short burst, obviously, until like they super hard call it. So there's a lot of like cool tactics, right? Like when you start like getting like really experienced in the game, you start learning shit like this, right? So like this is what I do. If you're really like feeling it, you can actually like, if you think you're gonna get air thrown, you know, you get something like this too, right? You get like a cool like air air burst, right? So like those are like little techniques, but thinking about the situation that is bad, and sometimes holding it when you get hit is not always like the best option. Sometimes, depending on like what their resources is, you want to wait before you burst, right? You see how it's so easy to like burst that, take the burst right there, and then look at this. Look at that. Now you took 207 damage with no burst. And that's all because you panicked, right? Sometimes you have to take a little bit of damage and then you want to burst. Sometimes bursting before the damage hit you, it's actually bad. Then sometimes you have to take a little bit of damage and then burst. You have to like you have to just take it, depending on the situation. And this is the reason why right here. See? Once you've seen Bandit, there's nothing to say. Now, if they don't have meter, obviously you could like make the read right here, right? But if they do like moves like this, for example, right here, you don't want to, you got to be careful, right? So look. But if it's moves like this, you can. So also keep in mind of like what move does what. So happens to be the safety net, right? His far slash actually is burst safe than his close slash. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me why, just know he's smelling the game. And then the best part too, and you'll start seeing like a lot of players that understand like the meta game of like bursting, is like you'll see something like this. You see how you wait it, but then like you know they wait, you can kind of like strike back. So you'll see a lot of people like press a button immediately because they know instantly that the person is like reading my burst. Is burst worth holding with low defense gut characters? I burst one hit, knowing I'll die possibly the next 1 or 3 hits depending on the starter. It depends on the matchup. That's a good and good question to ask too. So like, obviously, if you get hit somebody like this, that hurts. But you also don't want to burst there right there because it could have been worse. Because if you get hit by something like this, that definitely does more damage, right? So it depends how you got hit, right? Like, if your risk gauge is high and you get hit by a low starter, depending on how it hits, you kind of want to burst. Let's say you were jumping, and you know Naga players, you know what they're going to do. Or they're probably going to 5K you. Well, you definitely want to kind of burst that because of this right here. You don't want to get hit in like where your risk gauge is. You see how much damage you get from that? And that's your risk gauge up. But damage output is probably different without it. So like something like this, it's not so bad. You could take that. So holding your burst when you're almost at full risk it can get bad, because then everybody's just gonna look for you to burst every time you're at risk gauge. The whole goal for having a defensive resource like this is to play like a game of tug of war. What about characters putting major corner pressure? Like you get burst to push them out because the pressure just restarts. Yeah, again, I think against characters that are like Milia, Chip, and Geo are good examples of what you just asked. Actually, I think bursting them to keep them out of the corner, keep yourself out of the corner versus them is really good. Obviously, you're like, okay, I'm gonna block this. Okay, I got hit again. Got hit low. Now it's good to burst there. Why? Because two things. Why? You got out of the loop, and you also stopped them from getting positive bonus. So sometimes, even if you see a character do this, this is a good place to burst too. They're like in the startup and the recovery of their move. So like when you see something like this, good to burst. Why? Because they can't do anything unless they have meter. But again, Milia spinning meter to think that you're going to burst there is good for you. Them using resources to call out your resources is good. So yeah, these are really a couple of things that can help people improve like their way of like getting out of like bad situations. So I really hope this helps a lot. Let me know how you guys feel about this, you know, if it's helpful or not.